Thanks for watching this video regarding invoicing in Intuit Practice Management. I'm kind of where the source of where it all starts on the timesheet. And you see the timesheet there as well as my expenses. So as your staff enters time here and saves and submit the timesheet or they submit the expenses, that becomes WIP and expenses that you can then go to the time and billing tab and create an invoice. So I'd like to just kind of walk you through that process. Now you'll see here, let's go over a few of the preferences that matter. I'm just using a regular grid 2 timesheet. It has the client, the work code, and the hours. These work codes, if you are a QuickBooks user and you have service items, there's a way in the admin tab under general settings to import your service items into the actual IPM, or you can use the work codes that we give you. So I'm just going to choose a particular client here and then a work code on some of the work that I'm doing for this particular client. And there's even timesheets that you can link to an engagement, the work code and the client to the engagement if you like. But I'm doing a simple tax preparation. We'll do it today, and we say we did 4 hours. You can put in some notes, etc. And I'm going to save that, and then I go ahead and submit it, and submit the timesheet there. And you'll just have your staff submit periodically based on the policy of the firm, but they're going to keep track of their time, and that's going to multiply the hours times my default rate as a staff member, and I'm going to go ahead and create an invoice against that. Now, there is a way to do fixed fee or do it by the work code rate, things like that, but by default, IPM is going to multiply the time by the actual billing rate of the staff, which is also set under the admin tab and users. You drill into the user record. Look for other videos on how to do that. So let's go do some invoicing. I clicked on the time and billing tab. There's 3 sub tabs and then some tabs under that. But I can manage time and expense. I like to show that first, where I can actually post timesheets over to QuickBooks for quick payroll. And I can also post them as already been billed. So they're not waiting to go to an invoice. Very helpful. And then when you go to time and billing, it always defaults to the prepare invoice tab. We've changed this window a little bit over the last 6 or 9 months or so, but you can review the WIP by running a WIP preview report by engagement, which is really by client or staff member and work code. If you want to see how your clients are doing as far as what's been billed, what's been input, etc., before you actually make a decision. Then you go to create the invoice and then post the invoice to QuickBooks, or you can just print it out of here. Keep in mind that IPM doesn't receive a payment itself. That's where QuickBooks comes in, and QuickBooks will update the AR record as well as the last amounts paid on any invoices posted from IPM to QuickBooks. You'll see that in the billing history tab under the clients tab. But still, back to invoicing, we're going to go to create drafts. And I'm actually going to drill in on a client that has a lot. Again, those reports on the last page getting started are probably really helpful to give you a bird's eye view. But I'm going to go into Aaron Brady's here, and if you click on the blue link here, it'll show me all the hours and the work that have been done by my staff for this client. And what I like to do, and this is one of the things we changed about 6 months ago, makes it a lot easier to invoice clients. I'm going to go ahead and filter it by date range just by clicking the little drop down there, and it puts it oldest to newest. So I can just choose all the things that were just up through the 27th, we'll say through January here, and I can go ahead and click on Create Invoice. Now, if I want to, I can click Edit Rates here, and I'll show you another place to get that. It brings up Aaron Brady's client record for billing rates, where it defaults to the staff rate card, and my billing rate is the staff or the staff that are that have created these hours and entered them. But I can always choose a custom rate by staff member, or I could change the rate type to the activity rate, which is really the work code rate if you want. But by default, it's always going to be that staff rate card. But that's how you can go ahead and edit the rates if you want before you go ahead and create the invoice. But I'm just going to go ahead and create an invoice for these 5 or 6 line items, and the rest will be left for later on. So you go ahead and click Create Invoice, and then I'm going to return to the Invoice Create Drafts page. And I'll also notice, that the amount for Aaron has gone down a lot. I had well over 4, now I'm at 33.70. So I've already created an invoice. We'll go to Finalize and post it to QuickBooks. Another way to get to the client information to make the changes for billing rates and other things is just to drill on the name as well, and you see that same pop-up. Invoice settings, here would be billing rates. That's what we were just looking at. I can also create on invoice settings I can choose, it's default time and material, but I could do a fixed fee if I wanted to, and I'd put a fee here and a field here for a fee. Maybe I bill Aaron 1,000 or 1,200 bucks a month, regardless of the time we have against them. But by default, IPM is going to choose the time and material invoice, although you can change those defaults to a different invoice template in the admin settings for invoice templates. I'm going to close for now. So it's pretty easy to actually create the invoice, and I love how you can just pick and choose the hours you want to put in the invoice now and then go ahead and create it. Also, for Aaron, I could have just written up the actual invoice or written it down just by changing the invoice amount here. And though I have 3370 amount in time, maybe I invoiced him for 3,500. So I wrote it up $130. And there's reports, for write up and write down summary. Now, this down in the lower left, for those of you who use Lacert a lot and actually are used to invoicing out of there, you can import Lacert invoices from Lacert right into IPM, and it creates the invoice and puts it right in the finalize section for you then to post to QuickBooks or print it out. Okay, but if you want to see AR, if you want to see, if I go to the clients tab real quick, just a quick tangent here, if you want to see the billing history on a particular client, current AR, as well as, last amount paid on an invoice, you're really going to need to hook up QuickBooks, right? Without QuickBooks, this tab here will essentially be blank, right? But we do have firms that just are using it for engagement tracking, and they go ahead and still create an invoice from here to relieve the WIP, but they're obviously seeing the AR and the payments for those clients in another program. So let's go back to time and billing, and I'm going to go to finalize now. And then here's the invoice for Aaron. If I click on it, it's going to open up the invoice itself. I can put in my notes or additional notes, and I can also click on the print icon at the top to PDF, and there's several print options from here if you're just giving it to your client as they leave and you're going to post it to QuickBooks later. I like the time and expense detail group, and I'll go ahead and print that so you can see what it looks like. It just takes a little while to process, and then that PDF-able invoice will be available here, and this is how you're seeing it. So a lot of firms will just print out an invoice, give it at the time here, and then post it to QuickBooks later, and maybe start the the aging for the AR in QuickBooks later. So I'll close that at this point, and this as well. And here it is. I'm going to go ahead and click Post, and it's going to create the final invoice and then import items from QuickBooks. So, and it's going to create the invoice actually in QuickBooks itself. So if we go into QuickBooks and once you do the sync, which is, you can do it manually or it runs every 5 minutes, just to give you an example, here would be an invoice in QuickBooks that came over from IPM. Okay, and then you see the sales tax there, and a lot of customization you can do, of course, as you guys know, in QuickBooks on the invoice itself. We'll go back now. And that's essentially invoicing with Intuit Practice Management. So some important things to remember, and of course to sync, the sync utility will run automatically there. So regarding invoicing, let's take a look at some of the key preferences and settings. Again, the WIP comes in based on the timesheet entry from your staff and yourself. Also the expense, if you put in expense as well. On that timesheet, you can choose to make things not chargeable or reimbursable, and you can set a work code as a default that you never charge back. A lot of people use work codes to track internal meetings. You're not actually going to create an invoice from that, right? So there's all that to do, but some key preferences regarding invoicing. Under general settings, here are the timesheets. Again, if you want a timer, or if you just want the one I was using was grid 2. If you want to link an engagement to the work code in the client, you could do grid 3 or 4. Also, the invoice settings, the default billing type, I do time and material, but I could have changed it to fixed fee or something else. Work codes, important. I imported these from my QuickBooks service items. However, if you don't use QuickBooks, again, we give you a 30 or 40 work codes that you can use to create an invoice from the open WIP. And again, you're not going to be able to receive a payment in IPM, so keep that in mind. Expense codes as well, which you can link to QuickBooks. Here would be your invoice templates. I actually created my own fixed fee template. That's how I have that as an opportunity. These are pretty much the 4 main templates that we give you with IPM, but you can build your own custom templates to invoice with depending on your needs there. And those are pretty much the key settings there. If I go down to QuickBooks Sync settings in the left, it's important that if you are posting expenses or you're posting time, check off the box to post them as billed, because IPM is already going to send the invoice over to QuickBooks. So I don't want a bunch of time there waiting to go to an invoice, just in off chance that a colleague of mine will duplicate the invoice to the customer. Okay, so those are some key preferences there as well. If I go back to time and billing, one of the other things I wanted to show you and going into create drafts is you will see a carryover column. So let's say I hadn't, anything that I hadn't invoiced last month from December is going to carry over to this period of January. So I have the current and then I have the carryover. And I love the fact that when I drill in, I can pick and choose based on oldest date the actual items they're going to go on to the invoice itself. So that's a nice change we had. It's a little easier to see what you're really going to invoice. And again, I like to filter it by date, but you could filter it by some of the other columns. I just think it makes sense to go by oldest to most recent. And when you receive a payment in QuickBooks, it's just going to update the AR and the payment in the Clients tab under the billing history in Intuit Practice Management. So I hope this has been helpful as far as invoicing in Intuit Practice Management, and you have a great day.